Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Tooele Happy Hour podcast starring Jared Anderson and David Weiss. Today's guest, Tim. Tim's going to talk to us about the banks, about the economy. He's going to tell us how to get rich quick. Tell us more, Tim. Introduce yourself, please.
Hey, I want to say, I know for a fact that Tim lives with a waterfront right behind his house, which is the sign of wealth and richness.
It is. Well, actually, in my case, I want to challenge. We're going to start with a challenge already. Like I am just an average guy who likes to do hard work. So about 25 years ago, I bought a house that was falling in the ground. It happened to be on a lake, and I've been fixing it up ever since. And I'm still not done, guys. So like, it's not. It is nice to have a lake, though, and I do have a little boat that I get to putter around on.
I'm loving how humble he is about his estate.
I actually went to school where Tim lives in Oneonta, right, Tim?
I live outside of Oneonta, about 5 miles, Oneonta, New York. And that's where you went to college, right?
Well, it's for one of the colleges I went to. I went to a couple of them. I had to experiment.
Attaboy.
Yeah.
College is good for experimentation, man.
Is it a beautiful place up there? We've talked about this before, but let's run through the pre-show chat.
Yeah, so basically, look, I love where I live. It's rural, it's farmland, it's wide open spaces. We've got hunting, we've got fishing, we've got boating. We've got things we can do. I got a buddy that's got a bunch of acres. We can go over there and ride our four-wheelers. But as always with New York State, there's this constant pressure and threat that they're going to take everything from you. You know what I mean? And so that's the feeling that we get. That I get all the time.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, I think everywhere has that feeling, but not everywhere has a.
Well, deep down, we all know that we don't own the land we reside on, even though we pay a mortgage to it. I mean, theoretically, we kind of just rent it, and we deep down we understand that, and depending upon how hard the economy gets, the more pressure they'll put on us over that. So they have leverage on us, and subconsciously, that's what you dream about at night.
That's actually a pretty good point. That's a good way to put it, right? That our reality doesn't match up with what we've invested in. You know, that the government's always kind of there in the background, renting us our own property, abridging our rights, and that's kind of a reality. It's almost depressing, though.
Yes, it is. It's very depressing. But we have one thing you don't have. We don't have a governor that is expressing the desire to do that. Not as much.
Our governor is basically, I think that it's been decades here in New York where we've been under this sort of one party kind of rule where they get to just make the rules. They answer to only themselves. Every virtuous cause out there, they take our money and force us to invest in it. I mean, you can look at our education system in New York State. We rank like number one in expenditures, and our overall performance is, I think it's definitely not in the top 10. I think it's somewhere around 17. It's comparable with Kentucky. And anytime we try to fix it, the unions have this death grip. And so life goes on, but that's a reality. I'm looking to get out of this state.
Where are you going to go?
That's a good question. Maybe I come out to Utah. What do you think?
Heck yeah, come on out.
We should at least come visit. Check it out.
Yeah, do they have
Tennessee,
trees here?
Tennessee, maybe. I don't know. These are things I think about. My youngest is almost done with school, and that will be a deciding factor.
Mm-hmm.
Once he's done, I can really take a look at moving out of the state.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
What did your kid go to school for, if I may ask?
Well, he's just still in high school, so
looks like he goes there for wrestling from all the pictures you post.
He does do a lot of wrestling. My kid's an above average. Actually, my kid's an exceptional wrestler. He's very good. He's had some bad luck. This past year, he had some goals that he set, and he didn't quite meet up with them. He had a tough day at sectionals, and but we're very proud of him. He was like 34-4, 35-4. He only had 4 losses all year. Mm. 2 of them came at critical times. He was pretty highly ranked. He's well respected. He does a really nice job. And guys, watching my kid wrestle, he loves to score, right? So like he's a scoring machine. He gets out there, he gives it his all. He gives 100%, 110% every single time. And so it's a blast to watch him wrestle. It's a blast to watch him play sports. I love it.
Uh-oh. You just got Facebook protected.
I did. Okay. Just keep talking.
Tell us more.
Yeah. Just keep talking while I flow through the gods of Facebook.
What did I do? Did I say something wrong?
It's me. It's me.
Oh, okay.
He just got locked out, but he's unlocking himself now.
Yes.
Okay.
And we're still live, no matter what. Even though Jared's account has been protected, we are still going strong. No, maybe not.
Well, we are still going on my page, guys, and we're picking up some viewers. Good. Finally, it is still happening on some level.
So weird that.
So this is what happened to me last week. Now, Facebook has this new plan called Facebook Protect. And when they feel like you are influential enough, they'll implement it. And then it locks you out and you have to go through some sort of give me your phone number kind of deal.
Oh, that 2-factor authentication.
Correct. Now, if you mess up, it will lock you out of that particular computer or phone or whatnot, and you'll have to go on a different device to unlock it. And the process will continue and continue until finally it works. But it was a pain in the butt. I was locked out of my account for at least a week, and I thought, I'm not getting back my Facebook account. But a lot of people are experiencing this Facebook Protect methodology they're using, and they're unable to get back in. Journalists and people who actually make money off of Facebook, they've been complaining online about this now for a few months. So let's see if Jared gets it.
Is it still going?
Yeah, we're still live.
Heck yeah. Man, we're golden. Let's keep rolling. Yeah. So they locked me out for a minute, and it doesn't matter because here I am. But anyways,
still alive.
So we brought Tim on. Tim's a guy I thought about when the banks started having issues. Last week, end of the week before last. Tim,
you guys thought of me.
Yeah, I thought. Well, you're an economics guy, but you're also not trying to sell us on economics. So I thought of you. I thought, man, I need to get Tim on.
I appreciate you thinking of me, man. And I think that it's not an unreasonable idea because I did study economics at that SUNY Binghamton, at State University of New York at Binghamton. It's a legitimate college. Like there was a lot of published professors. We did a lot of positive things. We did a lot of good studying. I have a decent working knowledge of economics, and I think maybe I can shed some light on this banking crisis. So I'm glad you guys reached out to me.
Man, hey. You know what? You're the cat I thought about, and we haven't chatted in way too long. So, just a brief rundown. It looks like the banking hiccup started with Silicon Valley Bank, SVB. It seems like we need to have initials for everything that happens nowadays.
And I'm glad that they got bailed out because they do donate a lot of money to Black Lives Matters, according to some sources.
Well, there's so many issues to bring up. One of the issues to bring up is that when a bank doesn't do what a bank is supposed to do, which is make money off of loaning money out and paying depositors a reasonable interest rate and then charging more when they loan out their depositors money, then the issue becomes, what are they actually doing? And SVB is one of those, maybe it's, go woke, get broke kind of thing. They gave $70 million to Black Lives Matter, $75 million to Black Lives Matter. We look at like FTX. We see some of these businesses end up looking like scams and just like to fill political coffers. And SVB has some elements of that, but they also had some legitimate depositors that I don't know deserve to be hurt by SVB's kind of poor management. I want to point out an idea though, to you guys, and maybe you'll understand it. But we have to take a look at the overall economic conditions that have been going on with the government response to COVID, with the actual reality of what we've been talking about as libertarians and some conservatives. We talk about this notion of sound monetary policy, and we talk about these issues of when we devalue the currency and we do things like ending up creating inflation. When does that come home to roost, and how do we see it? And I think that the response to inflation automatically created this devaluation of SVB's investing assets. They had no real good place to. Banks don't put out money fast enough. First of all, like that's an issue, and I'm not sure if I'm going to say that if that's the best way to say it, but they're not going to be making a lot of money off of loans if they're not making a lot of loans, right? So they have to find someplace else to park their money. Then we have fractional reserve banking, so banks can loan out like 90% of the money that people have there on deposit, right? So they weren't making great loans. They weren't getting a lot of loan business. So what they do is they go and they buy things like supposedly non-risky investments, right? Like treasury bills and stuff like that. Now, one of the problems with treasury bills, guys, is that they are directly impacted by the Federal Reserve's interest rate, okay? And so like a T-bill, I was trying to think of a good way to give an example. Let's say we have $1,000 T-bill that's due in 10 years, right? To buy that T-bill today, you only have to pay $900. That then infers or implies an interest rate of about 2%. But if the Fed starts charging 3%, all of a sudden that T-bill doesn't appreciate in value, even though it's closer to its maturity date. It actually loses value because you can get more interest someplace else than that T-bill. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Well, it's just like how savings has been for the last,
yeah, you're counting
years.
You're counting on a stable interest rate to make your money. And once that unstabilizes, which, I mean, for the past couple of years, who would have thought that interest rates would be 8% today when we were looking at the market 2 years ago? I would have never thought.
Yeah, it was average what? Well, money to them or money to us. Money to us average was, down around the twos. Money to them was free.
And there were times where they were basically paying them to take the money, right? 0% interest. And so I don't think that society realizes or focuses enough on the fact of what is our money backed by? What purpose does money serve in our society? And guys, it starts to look like just a numbers game in a way, right? When the Fed can just make 0% loans to banks to get them to make other loans to other people, there's an issue there. And then the Fed does things like fiat currency, and the government borrows from the Fed and the U.S. Treasury to give out stimulus checks. And so we have this monetary system that's only backed by the confidence in the U.S. economy. And I think that
or backed by the U.S. Navy. I mean,
well,
potato. Well, here's what I wanted to ask you about a little bit. So the Fed was started to stop the boom and bust cycle. That's a natural cycle within almost all markets, even if it's not capitalist. Even in socialist markets, they end up with the boom and bust because the market has to correct itself. Usually about every 10 years is historical markers.
It's like a leap year.
But it has to reset itself as too much money and too much grows underneath it, which makes an unstable platform. So it corrects itself and then kind of does a little bump down. The
Right.
Fed did slow down a lot of boom and bust, but it altered when they came and how they came. So it built all these bubbles. And that's when we have really big collapses, is when one of these bubbles pops. And
Yeah,
that's
like,
what I'm worried about we're hitting soon.
well, there is a reality, right? That one of the things that people noticed about SVB was that they had nowhere near enough reserves to cover their obligations. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if people decided to start taking their money out, they were going to be in real trouble, that their reserves were not going to be able to cover their expected outflow. What that causes, when people realize that, is then people line up at the door and start taking their money out. And so there's the multi problem presented by this inflationary environment, and the notion that the Fed is now trying to push back hard against inflation, and people realize that SVB didn't have the assets to cover what they were obligated to cover.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
they,
Well, and not to throw aspersions at the people who had their money in SVB, but if you're dealing with that amount of money, you should know what the FDIC is and how much it covers, correct?
so yeah, yeah. Let's go work all the way down through this, okay? So yeah, the FDIC has limits and rules that it covers $250,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
Per,
Why,
per
why,
bank account.
why aren't those businesses spreading their money out through multiple banks? I think that was kind of one of the reasons why FDIC was set up the way it was. So it wasn't a buy-in insurance. So it was a blanket insurance with a ceiling, so that you'd spread your money out through a bank, so that the people weren't on the hook for one bank that, offered rates to draw people in and then crashed on purpose because the government would pay them off. So I understand it would be an economic hit, but also there is an idiot tax, and once in a while the idiot tax comes due.
Yeah, there's so I've been talking about this a lot, and Kevin Wilson and I, you've seen some of our shows. We kind of tried to.
I try to
we
catch
tried
them
to-
every time I can.
Yeah, no, and then man, I appreciate it, and I try to catch your guys' show. There's an issue there of we have things like payroll accounts in a bank like SVB, and those payroll accounts can be huge. There's the people that are at risk sometimes aren't necessarily just rich people with money. It's small businesses who have to make payroll. And
I agree, but still,
but
spread it out. You can figure out how to spread it out. You can say, okay, our advancement bank account is over here. Or payroll for this department is here. This department, figure it out. But
You can have two bank accounts in the same bank and get covered twice, if my knowledge is correct.
now that's a possibility. That is something that I do not claim to have perfect knowledge of.
Either way, it's SBC offers loans for tech, or SVB offers loans for tech, and they give them out freely for tech. If you went in there for a house, they'd probably tell you, no, buy that policy. It drew people with kind of tech ideas into the bank to get a loan. So they kind of cornered a market there. But what it did is, when we need to adjust how we do the FDIC, up the rates, up the insurance cost, spread that out, or they need to be warned ahead in advance. Look, FDIC covers up to this. Here's the options you have to alleviate that. Because otherwise, what we're doing, and I know Biden came out and said the taxpayers aren't going to pay any of this bullshit.
Okay, we always are picking up the tab.
Yeah.
If you mind, let me expand on that, right? Even this inflationary tab, right, is borne predominantly by the middle class and poor people in our country, okay? So unsound monetary policy. Like they can move a decimal point at the Federal Reserve and just say that people have more money. Like there's this whole fiat currency fiasco. But what they actually do is they still steal productivity from the middle class to pay for these things, regardless of what like sophist bullshit that they lay on you. They're still stealing from the middle class. They're still devaluing the currency, and they're still not making rich people pay their fair share. Like, I know, do I sound like a communist when I say that? But like, we're covering the risk of people with lots of money, and it's the people at the lower end in the productive class that is taking the hit for this. That's going to take the hit for this.
The government's always robbed the middle class to pay for what's called now the laptop class. Always. When they talk about bailing out the student loans, they're going to be robbing people who get calluses on their hands to pay for people who got a English degree who now, perform barista work at Starbucks.
That is the crux of the problem. And a lot of the people in the laptop class very conveniently don't want to realize that. They want to be mad at people who realize that their economic freedom is being curtailed, that a kid that made a decision to go right to work at 18 years old instead of going to college, that he deserves his money to be valuable down the road. They shouldn't just devalue their way out of it.
100%.
If I could switch the anger and hatred from the wealthy class that's not paying their fair share to the people who have the capacity to pull the levers of power on this economic fiat machine, those people who have the ability to manipulate these levers of power for the printing press and whatnot, that's where I think our focus should be directed. But somehow psychologically, we're saying, these people over here aren't paying enough of their fair share in this unfair system. So somehow, without being able to wrestle those levers of power away from this corrupt class, because no matter who you are, if you have those levers of power dangling in front of you, sooner or later you're going to be tempted to pull one for some reason or not. But if we could somehow just remove that from the human element of our economy, we might have a fair shot at living a decent existence as a human society. But this psychological loop that we're in, it seems like it's just going to have to spin itself dry until one of us pukes and falls over, because for me, it's almost like watching people try to explain how big the fish they caught in Narnia is when they try to rationalize this fractional reserve system.
So that presents another conundrum, that as libertarians, how do we communicate these things, and how do we effectively gain numbers and power and leverage to make a better society? And yeah, I think that your point is actually incredibly valid, that they get us successfully, the people who get to pull the levers of power, get us arguing about people who don't really have any power. What concerns me though is, like, there is the idiot tax. Like, they should have known, some of these people with money could have spread out their deposits and done the work. Why should we foot the bill? It gets into where we lose this notion of, I'm a libertarian and the government screws everything up. I feel like there's a point where if we don't bail out the SVBs and the payroll deposits, who actually ends up getting hurt? And that's a question that I have a hard time answering. So
you're right. It's the people, it's the businesses. It causes contraction on at least that part of the market, which is a lot of tech startup markets, So yeah, that would cause a contraction, but I'm tired. If my business, if my small single person business was to have an issue, I have no recourse. I just crash. But why is it that just because a lot of businesses have an issue, everyone else has to jump in and bail them out? I think this would be one, if they have a good product, they will survive. That's just point blank.
There is a point where the people that took the risk should bear there is a risk that they accepted, right? That they know that if they have over $250,000 in the bank, that in one account, that isn't covered by FDIC insurance. And there's maybe, the moral hazard, right?
Like, yeah, maybe we could have other insurance companies jump in and say, hey, look, we offer underage insurance, and let the companies pay for that.
It also would be as an adjustment to how much they pay the bank pays as a return. They're saying, if you want to have this much money here, let's talk to an insurance company. They want, a percent, like a fraction of a percent, to protect this deposit in our bank. They're happy with our bookwork so far. I think when we get down that wormhole, though, we like it, we understand it, but how do we communicate that out to the rest of the world in a way that appeals to them? That there is a private enterprise solution to this, and that deals in honesty, deals in insurance, and deals in rich people not getting the benefit of just being rich and everybody bailing them out. The profit is no longer privatized. The risk is no longer socialized, right? It's you're taking the risk, you're paying the price. Congratulations, we have a better, sounder system.
Yeah. And if we do want the government to bail them out, have them sign a contract. All right, you pay this much back. Make it so that there's teeth on everything.
I love the idea, right?
Yeah, you want to get bailed out on this? Here's the deal. But and I don't know. I don't know what the feeling on the populace is as far as how does the general populace feel about bailing all the banks out? I don't know how they feel about it. I know my gaggle of, granted, I run around with a lot of people with very low IQs, and I am their leader. But
oh no,
none of us are very happy about it. I don't know if the average person is. I don't know if the average person, or even say the average, middle class person's like, yeah, this is a good idea. We should, the country should come together and bail them out.
They don't think of it like that, right? I think, and this is actually kind of a valid concern. If the dominoes start to fall and SVB goes belly up, and that in turn causes Signature Bank to go belly up, or contributes to Signature Bank going belly up, if payrolls, that are invested in these companies can't be met, if those lines of credit that facilitate small businesses getting inventory to the time that they can bill for that inventory, if those things all collapse, what are we left with? We're left with, we go beyond a recession into a depression because of how interdependent interdependent and dependent specifically on lines of credit are small and medium and even large businesses are counting on. So
and by bailing them out, we're just building a bubble to make the next time bigger.
We're kicking the can down the road, brother. I agree with you there. I don't know what the solution is. I don't know how to divest from this notion that what we have is kind of working and we can just tinker with it and fix it. To me, I see the writing on the wall. I think that there is going to be some sort of apocalyptic crash of our economy and a perhaps a third world war. Those are things that I see as possibilities. And so I don't know. I want the system to maintain itself on some level. I want it to survive.
Of course. Yeah. I would like to see it survive. But when I look at this, I ask myself, would I rather have this fall on my shoulders or my son's shoulders, or worse yet, my grandchild's shoulders?
which is something that's lost in our society. Our goal is to leave our kids with a better future, or at least some of us have that goal. That age, my age group, a little bit before, a little bit after, we still have that. Hey, what can I do to make my kids' life better? I think that society has grown increasingly emotional, increasingly dependent on the government for answers, and so I'm concerned that there's no going back, right? Like the selfish class is ruling everything, and I don't know, like
But enough about the boomers, guys. Let's talk about Trump.
Oh boy, you wanna?
No, we will hit Trump before this is over.
Yeah,
but no, I think you're right. Granted, I know nothing about economy. I know nothing about the banks. I just know that when loans are given out freely, especially to the source banks, and then it's filtered out, and then they just give out loans for everything, I know that every time a loan is given, money pops into existence.
right.
At least money on the ledger. I mean, the Fed doesn't even print money anymore because it pops into existence when you buy your Starbucks or your tank of gas, and everything. And granted, those have made life in the United States awful sweet, also increased the price of everything in the United States. And so especially those things that you kind of need to survive. Housing, the prices of housing are ridiculous. I mean, just to rent an apartment is insane.
I think that we have a possibility of reaching people with messaging that runs along that line. So, first of all, the other thing I got to say is that you do not need a college degree. You do not need an economics background to understand the problems with our economic system, where this lack of accountability, these artificially low interest rates, the government using the Fed to manage our economy on some level to try to avoid boom bust cycles, that if we can solve that problem and say, look, inflation is stealing from you, it's stealing your future. I have hopes that that's a way of getting a better response from people.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this. Like, okay, we were in some serious trouble when that bank collapsed, but if we had let it collapse, we would have been in much more serious trouble. People would have been, put out on the street and starving, but the government came in and they saved it.
Well, hold on. What people would have lost their jobs? Okay. So from my understanding, a majority of their employees were people in the tech industry, coders and things like that. Highly marketable skills.
Well, I'm not talking about those people though, Jared. What I'm considering here is this domino effect that Tim was referring to. Like, okay, this bank collapses, and then everything that relied on that system has to fill in, and then they collapse.
Well, it's not everything that relies. You got to look down the line. So that business goes out, and everyone that goes to lunch at that restaurant from that business, that restaurant loses that business. The hairdressers they deal with, the masseuses, whatever. I don't know what people in San Francisco do for fun, but they all lose a little bit of business, sure. But right now, what we're doing is we're bubbling the market to where, again, look down the road in 5 years. I mean, right now, get the average middle income single guy to try to find just an apartment to live in. He can't afford it. They want to absorb 75% of a middle income paycheck.
Yeah.
And that's what we're staring at. What are we going to look at after that? And either it's nefarious or we have put morons in charge.
We definitely have morons in charge.
All right. But that's the good answer.
Yeah. Well, at some point though, we have to be like, they're so incompetent. isn't it actual malice? Like, isn't it actually malicious that's how incompetent that they are, that their priorities are wrong. Again, let's go to SVB donating $70 million, excuse me, to Black Lives Matter causes, which I think we've had this conversation. Some Black Lives Matter causes are appropriate, some and can be funded from crowd sources, but some are simply money laundering tactics for the team blue to get their pockets filled with tons of cash.
It all reverts
like
back
FTX.
into an organization called Act Blue.
Right.
Is there ever any circumstance that a bank should be donating money? That's the question.
I think that's something that we can talk about that happened in 2008 and is happening again now. When the government creates conditions that a bank benefits from stepping outside of what its primary function is, which is to make money and protect money for its investors, okay? For the people, not for its investors, excuse me, for its depositors. And there's a big difference there, right? Yeah, for its customers. When a bank can step outside of making money for its customers and from its customers by participating in political activity, that is where those levers of power get pulled. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's what happened in 2008. They want to make it about something that it never really was. Okay. Like the Community Reinvestment Act was at the heart of those loans. There was strong pressure from the government to make tons and tons of loans into communities that were not financially ready for loans of that nature. Now, who crushed those communities? Again, we've got to take a look at the government and their like softcore bigotry, iron fist fascism, their segregation that they pull, like by beneficially kind of playing these games on people. Those are things that I don't know that they've already successfully blamed the wrong people for it. So how do we fix that? Right? Like, yeah. Am I, guys, I get off on tangents. I wonder if I make sense. Like, am I presenting a coherent idea?
Well, no, look, the policies at the Federal Reserve are to blame. Well, if we're going to have a Federal Reserve, I don't mind having a throttle and a brake on a car, which is what the Federal Reserve is supposed to be. They're supposed to be those that control the level of growth. It seems like, one, they're always in a reaction mode. Oh, it's running away 8 months ago, hit the brakes. Oh, it slowed down 2 months. 2 years ago, hit the gas. So obviously that shows me that you can't have central control over a monetary system that doesn't just include 360 million people, but it includes all 7 billion of the world.
Right.
So you can't have one group in control of that. We need to break that up. Now, granted, they are supposed to have done that with the different regions of the Federal Reserve, but they all still take marching orders from the Federal Reserve in New York, which lays out the path that everyone's going to do. The one in Denver may have its own thoughts and ideas and have a better grip on the center of the country, but it still gets marching orders.
Right.
And I'm a 10th Amendment guy. I'd rather see 50 Federal Reserves, 50 of them that say, the dollar looks like a dollar. It just says the United States of America, state of X.
Right.
And they control the elevation of the market there. Now, could that cause some competing issues where states try to grow too fast and collapse other states? Sure. But then they can also get punished by other states. They can get controlled. And then the people can decide where they want to move to. Other states can say, we're not going to use dollars that say Utah on them. Utah ran away, crashed all the rest of us. We're not using dollars to say Utah. So people in Utah and the state of Utah then would have to go to Colorado and work on an exchange and pay the cost of their malfeasance.
I don't know. Well, why shouldn't I have the ability to print money in my own home then? I mean, if we're going to go 50 states, what the heck?
Sure, get the reserves up enough. I'm down for it.
Yeah, I mean, you have to if it has value, right? If we can convince people that it has value, then why can't you? I
Yeah, I
mean,
can print
Bitcoin
money
certainly.
right now. No one's going to buy Jared bucks except to laugh at me and hang him on a wall at a comedy club or something.
I know, but that brings up the question that I always get to, like, what is our money backed by? Like, where is our money? It's only backed by our confidence in each other
Hmm.
and our confidence in the government, and so
And
that's
the
why.
U.S. Navy. That's,
And well, yeah, our military might. You are absolutely.
I mean, Gaddafi would be able to tell us all about it had he not forgotten that last part of that.
Yeah, no, that to me is why we have to be involved in NATO. That's to me is why we're supporting uh, regimes of like the regimes of Saudi Arabia.
Mhm.
I don't know if I want to go down this wormhole all the way, but like that's a reality that our the perception of value to our money supply is backed by our military might. Like that's
It
I
is.
don't know what else it's backed by.
Well, it's backed by a military that was the last one. I know everyone likes to, the leftists love to say, how come in 1950 we could have a 90% tax rate on the wealthy and still make shit? And because everywhere else had craters where they made shit.
Tim, let me ask you if this is a good thing or a bad thing. So recently, China has decided to take on the role of mediator between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Like, I think this was yesterday or something.
Don't forget Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah, yeah.
So Iran and Saudi Arabia, two enemies of each other, at least according to ourselves, sat down at the table and China shook both their hands and now they're being good. Now they're talking about this new BRICS dollar, this new currency that's Brazil and Russia and all these other different countries in a basket. If that comes into the economy, would that be a good thing or a bad thing for us because we have competition now?
Well, BRICS isn't new. That's been around for 20 years.
But it's starting to look real.
I think China's not going to let BRICS happen. I think China's just going to have China. I don't think China when they were on their left foot. They were a part of this BRICS. It's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South America, and Australia. Australia was a part of this.
Yeah.
Australia quickly backed out, I think, because they recognized that, oh shit, we're an island and that Navy could wipe us out in a minute. But I'm not throwing aspersions at anyone. No, I think, but yeah, China's making moves. But go on. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I kind of lost my train of thought. But my question would be, so the world uses the US dollar to trade to base petroleum prices on. They use the US dollar to base any number of worldwide transactions on. Would China benefit from a transition away from the US dollar as the basic currency of the world? And the answer is obvious, right? In part, since our dollar is based on global trade, our ability to ensure that it happens, in large part, petrodollars, the U.S. is tied to petroleum. Would China benefit from any erosion of faith in the U.S. dollar? And what do you think? Like, I mean, I think I know the answer. Their perception perception of it certainly would be.
I have two thoughts on that. Yes, I think they would, but no, I think they wouldn't.
Okay.
I don't think China could survive if they lost us as a customer.
That's probably a pretty valuable point. Like they certainly wouldn't mind increasing or enhancing their perception in the world community, but they don't want to destroy us. Is that
yeah? If our dollar lost its value, and we quit buying Amazon stuff, which is made in China and shipped over because we're all living in a cardboard box and what have you, I think China would take a huge hit.
But I'm talking about a competition type model where right now the dollar is just this uncontrolled creature that has unlimited access to all markets. And
Right.
if there was some sort of a competition to that dollar, then they would have to be a little bit more reasonable when they talk about the size of their fish they caught in Narnia. And then maybe we would benefit from that as well, because there's more controls within the inner circle of these lizard men types that actually define the economy.
It's a good question. Would it
That is,
force us
it's
to go to a gold standard like Russia did when we threw the heavy sanctions on them?
I'm interested in this thought. Now, it's kind of coming out of left field for me, but I do think that China is not necessarily our friend. But I like the perspective that you offered, that they may not want to destroy our economic engine, something that keeps their engines of business churning. So now I'm kind of perplexed.
That's a tough one. That is a big question. Then again, Indonesia's coming up. Indonesia is China's China. So
All right.
it makes you wonder what's next.
Well, we always got to wonder what's next, and if there's a way that we can benefit from it. I don't know that the Chinese, like, I'm always concerned that they simply want more power, and having access to energy, and the companies that we mentioned, Saudi Arabia, Iran, even Russia, they have access to energy that
Mhm.
we're willing to deny ourselves. Like, we have the energy in the ground, we're willing to deny ourselves it.
It's that
So
old fable.
Right. And the hardest part for these countries like Iran is that they have the energy to give the market, but they have no capacity
They have no
to sell
access.
it because they have no access to the SWIFT system. And if the BRICS system takes off, it will parallel the SWIFT system, which will give those countries the economic juice they need to actually propel themselves forward into the world market.
Although there's a lot of countries, including, I think, Great Britain and France, that are buying oil from Iran and have been for 4 or 5 years now. It is an interesting thought. And I also wonder, is China negotiating deals between them and trying to work on negotiating deals between Ukraine and Russia? Is that their Teddy Roosevelt in the Japo-Russo War moment, where that's when we exploded on the stage?
I
That was
always
like
think of China as a selfish actor. Like, what's in it for China?
Yeah.
And does destroying U.S. hegemony and the world's reliance on the United States military, does that benefit China? And I think the answer is yes, right? Like, that China can then say they can make money off of providing their military support, that they can start being looked at as the world's hegemonic leader if they're a peacemaker, if they're offering military support, if they're offering a valuable currency that's not subject to wild inflation. If you look at them as a selfish actor, we could be in a lot of trouble. We could already be missing the boat.
Maybe, but let's look at China. Right now, economic militaries are navies. That's what is an economic military, the economic support military. China has what, 3 carriers? One of them was a Ukrainian casino, a Turkish casino. Is that correct? It was a floating casino they bought and made into an aircraft carrier. And then they made one exactly like it. And then they bought, I think, a World War II or just after Swedish aircraft carrier. Who knew Sweden have a navy? But that's what China's working with. And then they've got fishing boats that, might have, but they're not going to deal with piracy, because that's where economic militaries come in.
Right.
You need to make the shipping lane safe. Now, granted, from everything I've, in all of my ignorance, understood, is that our Navy is really not kitted to be an economic Navy anymore either. is that we've turned away from destroyers and gone to more carriers, and carriers are not something that can patrol the different straits that piracy likes to enjoy, such as the Horn of Africa or Indonesia. And so that's part of that guarantee we made to the world, was saying, we'll have a Navy. We're going to make the ocean safe for you to trade. We've given up that a little bit. I mean, we can still do a lot more than anyone else, but China has 3 carriers and then 1 billion fishing boats.
If you really wanted to make the oceans safe for trade, wouldn't you just let the people on the boats have a Second Amendment?
Sure, but still, 10 people on a boat with guns. All those Somalian pirates have to do is say, we're going to join forces and have 2 piracy gangs that take the boat. They outdo them with numbers.
They could just call it a tax and call themselves the government, and everything would be fine.
And it's Somalia, you know. I mean, and that is just kind of the fact of the matter, is just our destroyers being in there curtailed a lot of issues. Remember when Somalia had that like 3 piracy raids in a row?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
I think so.
And then they went dark, right?
Yeah.
Why'd they go dark? Does anyone remember the last one?
Maybe they just don't report on it anymore.
When they had that destroyer with some Navy SEAL snipers on it, patrolling the area. Do you think it was the Navy SEAL sniper that shot that guy in that lifeboat? Or do you think it was the destroyer that shut Somalian piracy down?
Oh, the threat of more, like,
a destroyer is a
of
hell of a piece of equipment.
Okay, that's where I was going to go. The threat of successfully contradicting what they're doing. With
pirates only exist. Violence. Pirates only exist because of the laws that are on the sea. If you wanted pirates to go away, you'd have private security guards that were legally able to express themselves in a Second Amendment format. And I don't think pirates would exist anymore.
Yeah, and then everything you buy that came from Indonesia would cost 7 times as much, and you know, or a destroyer just floats along that strait. Now, I'm not saying either way's right or wrong. I'm just saying what is.
All right. Well, I'm not sure where to go with this one, because the issue of piracy was not something I anticipated talking about, to be honest with you.
Well, we were talking about banks, so piracy and banks go hand in hand.
Yeah. Yes, that is true. That is true.
Federal Reserve.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I took us away on a tangent. Just arguing. I'm not arguing to keep or to do away with the global currency that we have now. I'm just arguing why it is.
What do you guys think about Bitcoin and alternative currencies such as?
I was trying so hard not to say it. I was.
Dave's going to have to step into the bathroom and rub one out.
Yeah, don't worry. I just did one under the table. Jared gets triggered when I talk about Bitcoin, so I try to curtail my.
Let me give my honest answer on Bitcoin.
Okay.
All right. My feeling on Bitcoin is I think Bitcoin would be a fine curtail for the current system we have. Do I think that it would be a long-term or permanent solution? I don't know, but I think it would be a fine curtail for it. The issue with Bitcoin is Bitcoin is something right now that is only available to middle class and up, because our economy is such that anyone in middle class and down doesn't have the extra money to set and park in Bitcoin, because the money comes in and it goes right out, and it comes in and goes right out. And you need to be a person who's building up savings for Bitcoin to have any value.
Unless you're the kid mowing lawns for Bitcoin, then you just go around with a lawnmower and ask.
Well, I think that's a good point, right? That if we transition to Bitcoin as a form of payment and people become more aware of it, what I like about Bitcoin is this ostensible agreement between me and a guy in Taiwan that X percentage of 1 Bitcoin is worth X, amount of dollars, like whatever his dollars are, whatever my dollars are. It's this agreement that exists because that's what our money is confidence in each other. Bitcoin is a store of that kind of value, and the agreement is now worldwide. And look, this is all theoretical, right? Like, I'm not the machinations of how it particularly works and what its feasibility is, not necessarily the issue I'm discussing, but that it is an actual real agreement that kind of on some level takes the government out of their hands, are out of that agreement. It's between me and Jared in Utah and me and some guy in China. Like, that's where the agreement exists, that we agree that this thing is worth that, and we can exchange it for this amount of goods produced by XYZ company.
Yeah, and the only reason Bitcoin is weighed on the dollar is because the dollar is the dominant currency. So right. Bitcoin really doesn't cruise value next to the dollar. That's just how they show how much a Bitcoin is worth. It's the different yardstick. And if the US collapsed tomorrow, Bitcoin would be weighed against whatever's next. It just would. I would like to see Bitcoin used. It's just you cannot use it. And until, I think if even say Walmart started accepting Bitcoin, then I would say Bitcoin has value. Throw 30% of your paycheck into it. You know?
Then it becomes a currency, which is, I don't think it is a currency, right? Even though it's called a coin, I think it's a store of value. And I think that's something different than a currency. If I'm making the dollar there,
then it won't have any chance of replacing or circumventing the dollar.
Right. No, I don't think that's necessarily what I'm taught. What the part of it that I like the fact that it's an agreement that exists worldwide without the government printing more of it or controlling it or charging interest or making it create. I don't actually see it as a currency, right? Like, there was much talk about it becoming a modicum of currency and a modicum of exchange. I like that it's just a store of value, like a pile of gold, even though it's just digital and in a way imaginary, but not any more imaginary than the way that we create dollars. You know what I mean? Like,
oh no, it's a lot more real than that.
Well, legally, internationally, it is a currency because El Salvador uses that as a currency, and you can't take that away from them without a lot of force. Because El Salvador may only be 5 million people, but you got to get rid of them in order to say it's no longer a currency. And when it comes to a cryptocurrency, there's a fee attached to every transaction you make. So if I want to pay my programmer in Nigeria, chances are I want to use the currency that has the lowest fees attached to it. And Bitcoin is not that. I usually go to like Litecoin to pay programmers in other countries because of the fees. So, you know, even within the cryptocurrency markets, they're competing with each other to be the dominant crypto that people want to use.
So what do you think about Bitcoin? Do you think it will be is it a substitute, or is it will it get us away from the US dollar? Is it a better source?
I'll say this.
Value?
If I invent a language that is superior to English, far superior to English, the problem with that is I got to teach other people how to speak it myself, right?
You got to teach enough people to make it so there's an incentive for everyone else to learn it.
Like, kind of like libertarianism, if you think about
it. Except not as many autistic people and morons. But go on.
And look, I hate to say it, but it's true, right? Like, it's just, that's where we're at. We have a bunch of eggheads, and we have a lot of people that want really good things for other people, and we get bogged down in fighting over things that I just don't understand. We revisit issues over and over again, and have
who hates
wrestling matches.
Who hates libertarians the most?
Libertarians.
The other libertarians.
We knew the answer to that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No doubt.
with Bitcoin being a currency or being utilized throughout the world, you got to look at it like, okay, there's another language and I'm introducing it into our schools or our culture. How long will it take to actually catch on? And that could be years, generations. It depends on how big of a need for a new language there is. And there isn't a big need for a new currency because everything pretty much works really well in America, despite the zeros that go on the tail end of our deficit. I mean, there's already so many zeros, my eyes glaze over when I think about it. So if they just add another one, it's just,
Let me pose another thought. It might be a good idea to wait to, if Bitcoin wasn't going to become a currency, it would probably be a good idea to wait until the last Bitcoin was made before it became a currency, because talk about market fluctuation. When those last 5 Bitcoins are made, that market is going to look insane. It's going to explode. It's going to explode to probably where a Bitcoin's worth 300,000 or zero.
Right.
Right before that last Bitcoin is
explode.
made. Probably when they're down to like the last 10 Bitcoins, it'll be anybody's guess.
well, at that point, actually, it's the transaction fees that will feed the system.
Sure, but would you want to be holding Bitcoin that maybe I can buy a loaf of bread tomorrow? Maybe I can buy all the loaves of bread tomorrow. Would you want to hold a currency that has that much fluctuation in it?
But I think that one of the things that gets hidden actually is the fluctuation of and the negative like trend of what your dollar is actually worth, right? Like let's just put it in terms of beer, right? I used to be able to go out and buy a draft beer for a nickel or a quarter, right? And now it's $6 or $5.
What was that, like 10 years ago?
It was actually a little bit longer ago than that,
Because Tim, I would have to spend 10,000 Bitcoins to buy a Papa John's pizza back in 2009, 2010. And now I don't even have to spend 1 Bitcoin to buy a Papa John's pizza.
Yeah, matter of fact, it costs you more to buy the Papa John's pizza in the transfer fees.
You could buy a with 2 Bitcoins, you could perhaps buy a Papa John's franchise and have all the pizza that you want.
Yeah,
I don't know. It sounds like pretty wild inflation to me.
Yeah, but yeah, all the theorists on the Bitcoin say right before that last Bitcoin comes, the prediction is Bitcoin is going to explode. But, at least right now, no country has ever tripled in lowering value or raising value of their currency overnight. And Bitcoin, the predictions are that it's going to triple up or down every 5 or 6 minutes right before that last Bitcoin is produced. And that's just what I read. I don't come to me for
based on what though? Like why are they predicting that? Just is it
because of the fluctuation of trust in market? Some people are afraid that while that last Bitcoin is being made, the trust and the novelty of it will die off and it might collapse, or that everyone will say, I want it now, and it'll explode.
Yeah, I think that the one of the ways that issue gets solved is a broader, the more people understand the language that David is talking about, the more likely it is that Bitcoin will achieve some modicum of stability that will in fact respond to things like inflation, right? Like I saw it as a potential hedge against inflation, where my Bitcoin beer is going to be the same price tomorrow as it was 10 years ago, where we get to see like the $20 gold piece example of I could buy a suit with a $20 gold piece. Yep. I could buy a suit in 1850 with a $20 gold piece. Like it has stored value. So that's how I've always kind of viewed Bitcoin.
Yeah, and I think you're right, but I think we'll really see that after the last coin, because Bitcoin has a ceiling.
Yeah.
After the last coin is actually made or mined, I think that's when we'll see that the dollar will fluctuate against Bitcoin.
How many Bitcoins are left to be mined? Do we know?
Dave probably does.
Yeah, it's not many. A couple million, not many.
A couple
Okay.
million. I mean, it's
I think we're at like 18 million or something like that right
And there's
now, and you can have
24
21
million
million
total.
Bitcoin.
Yeah.
How many? I'm
So
sorry.
to parallel your comparison, like if you want to do an equilibrium of our economy to what would a Bitcoin economy look like, you calculate all the fiat money in our economy now and say, okay, I set that over how many Bitcoin that we have, and you can calculate like what will 0.0001 Bitcoin be worth if we just
A
parallel
penny.
that against our current economy.
Yeah. Or
No,
what?
that's was my thought when I was interested in it. When I thought that I was going to make a lot of money off of it, which I didn't. So I lost some interest in
Yeah.
it.
But it might come back. Well, it's probably going to come back. Let's face it, I don't think Bitcoin's anywhere near some kind of collapse or fall through the market. I think they have hiccups and, but I don't think it's going to go away, except for if governments intercede.
Yeah. And they let's be honest, they can at any point decide to blame the current banking crisis on people putting their money in Bitcoin. There are some rumors about Signature Bank that they have a massive crypto investment like to the tune of $4 or $5 billion, and that the actual fundamentals of Signature Bank were not that bad, but that they wanted to scare people off. So this was an issue of government using force to get banks to stop investing in any sort of crypto assets. Barney Frank, who serves on the board of Signature Bank, legitimately made the case that was what was. I don't know if it was legitimate. He's an emotional kind of speaker anyway, but is making the case that this was an attack on crypto.
And it could be.
Now,
It
in
does
a
make
way,
you
right?
wonder if the U.S. attacked crypto, would it make it stronger or weaker?
That doesn't it legitimize it every time
That's
they
a
attack it, or
question.
every
Yeah.
time somebody steals some, or they make a law protecting it, or contramanding it? Doesn't it all of a sudden kind of make it realer? Every time the government messes with it, it looks more real.
When China outlawed the mining of it, it dipped for what, a week and a half?
Yeah,
And then all of a sudden Turkmenistan took off with mining Bitcoin. It climbed right back up. And that week and a half was while all the Chinese miners turned off their computers and put them in boxes and drove to Turkmenistan to turn them back on.
It's like Obi-Wan Kenobi when he was like, if you should strike me down.
I will only
will
become
come back
stronger.
strong.
And that's true. And I think there's a lot to be said about Bitcoin and its value and all that, or all cryptocurrencies. I think we'll probably see a situation where all cryptocurrencies have a place. I would like to see that, because that would
right.
be a universal means of exchange around the world that isn't controlled or gauged by one singular government or shady bastard or any of that.
I remember in 2014 when I first started getting into Bitcoin, I would get so excited when I saw like just something about Bitcoin pop up on maybe like Yahoo or somewhere, just like any type of, hey, Bitcoin said this or did this in the news or an actual legitimate media. And nowadays you can't scroll the news without seeing the price of Bitcoin. I mean, it's so embedded in our society within such a small amount of time that, what's it going to do in 10 years? I'm sure it's not going to go away.
It's on the runners.
Well, I think that there's a distinct. All right, so like let's say what inflation does to society, even if not as many people understand it as we do, how damaging it is to purchasing power. Like there that people are saying, and the Fed, and the Fed, and the Fed, and people are getting that message. So they've got to be looking for alternatives for what they perceive to be safe places to park their money. Now, whether Bitcoin is that or isn't that depends on how strong the agreement remains going forward. So I don't know. Like I always am searching for that buzzword or that phrase or that thing that's going to draw people into libertarianism, and that people are going to start saying, hey, can we end this authoritarian nightmare? I feel like inflation and alternatives to the US currency and the power that they use to manipulate it. I wonder if that's one of those things that can wake people up.
Yes. Well, some people need a change in environment in order to stimulate them. And most of us are. I mean, we're behavioral creatures. If there's no food in the area, we're going to migrate to a new area. But if they keep putting food in the area, why would we move?
Well, here's what inflation does. Because inflation doesn't hurt everyone.
No.
Inflation hollows out somewhere along the class lines. It hollows it out.
Sure.
And it makes it so that those above a certain point have easier access to a better life. They love inflation. And it makes it so that those below it can't even access much of a life at all, and stalls them. And so it depends on where inflation is hitting. And I mean, I would say our middle class is already hollowed out to such a point that the one side of it are already okay with it. It's not touching any of them. And the other side has no voice. No one cares. Yeah. No one's there to answer. When a train wrecks and it floods a small, rural or semi-rural town with toxic gases, and nobody cares. I mean, all the news showed up to say, hey, we really do pay attention, but next in Ukraine.
Ukraine. They have a pretty good system figured out on how to keep people distracted from the fact that their lives are not getting easier, right? Like that their net worth is not growing, regardless of what the numbers in their bank account say, regardless of what the dollar value of their house is. They don't have any more at all. They have TVs, they have computers, they have guys doing podcasts, and all of that is good, but we've lost this real sense of a wealth accumulation. People don't even own their cars anymore, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's a scary and interesting time. I'm trying hard to teach my kids that a good cheap car is way better than a lifetime marriage to a lease, but who knows if that lesson will stick,
But does that good cheap car have all the bells and whistles and the heated foot pedals and the,
of course not, right? Like
floor roof or whatever, sun floor, no, they don't.
It's a problem.
And 4 years ago, that good cheap car was, or that new car was the easiest avenue to get into, where it was harder. I mean, last year it was harder to get into a used vehicle than a new one.
How do you talk someone? How do you talk someone into not cashing in a winning lottery ticket? I mean, let's say I get a winning lottery ticket, right? But if I cash that in, it does really negative things for the economy for everyone as a whole. But if I cash it in, it won't do anything negative to me. It'll only increase my value, but it's not really earned resources.
Yeah, I only see, you've got handcuffs or a good hemp rope or a ball bat. You have to stop them from going to the lottery office to cash it in. That's the only way I know how.
The truth is, those levers of power we were referring to in the beginning of the show, they're too tempting to give to human mortals. You have to remove any human mortal influence from the economy that can be emotionally based in order to have a chance for the regular Joe to succeed in society. The only hope.
Yeah. Now,
the only hope.
Sell that to me though. Sell that to people. Like, you're right. Okay. You're absolutely right. 110%. But how do we convince people that we have given those levers of power to a bunch of psychopaths and we need to take them back? How do we do that?
Remember what I said about libertarians a few minutes ago?
Yeah.
Don't have libertarians try to deliver that message. That might be one way.
But that's the problem.
But the libertarians are the only ones paying attention to it. I get that.
Yeah.
But, so it's like, I mean, what food is healthy. but it don't taste good. And that's the
Yeah,
Libertarian Party.
that's actually a good. So look, we've been doing this for a while, but I think, Dave, I actually have a multi-part or an interest in. At some point in some of our conversations, I got the notion that you were not necessarily like a fan, but somewhat sympathetic to Donald J. Trump. Now, has your feelings towards him, have they been swayed at all by recent actions, by maybe his behavior, anything? Like, how are you feeling about Trump now?
Trump is still my favorite Democrat ever. I think
That's a
I
good way to
think
put it.
that so right now we have a Republican Party, we have a Democrat Party. Libertarians are completely ineffective, but I love them to death, and
Yeah,
I identify pretty strongly with them if I
yeah.
believed in government. And then we have Donald Trump. And I think he only adds to the diversity quota that we need in our government systems to make it a better playground. Now, in the
Okay.
military, we say diversity is our strength. In politics, we say if you're not Republican or Democrat, get off the playground. And I think that's wrong. I mean, we're living by two different standards, and I don't want to see people drinking out of separate water fountains. I like this system where we have people like Donald Trump coming in and stirring the pot. But thank God we can at least use violence and initiate force against people like Donald Trump to keep the two-party system in place. Especially, we'll find out tomorrow if that works or not.
I, I'm like, I actually like the way that you frame that. Like, Donald Trump is outside of the normal system, but there's things that he did that I just remain disappointed. Where, like you said, he's your favorite Democrat ever. I think that he is enough like the past leaders, and then it gives this current dystopian authoritarianism this rallying cry of let's be anti-Trump. And so it's like, I think you would agree Trump was something of a populist. I'm not sure if you would agree that he was something of an authoritarian, but I feel as though he was something of an authoritarian. And I think that when we get into saying the Republicans are different than the Democrats, I get to where I rapidly see jokers like Mitch McConnell and jokers like Joe Walsh and Adam Kinzinger, and even that eye patch McCain from Texas, where it's like, hey, let's go to war, guys. Let's send jets. Let's do this. War is good for the economy. That's not what they're saying, but that's what they're thinking, you know?
He didn't even
So
finish 20 years in the military.
I he's he I,
Look,
yeah.
you're 100% correct on that. Here's my thoughts on all of that. Right now, yes, the Republicans or the right side, the conservative side, have authoritarian tendencies. You just don't see them as much right now because they're not in power, and it's hard to be an authoritarian when you hold no levers of power.
Right.
The left has the same authoritarian tendencies, but they're in power. So their power is on display. You remember in the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s when the right, which back then included some Democrats, for any of you that remember, who's Tipper Gore, they would push
Correct.
their authoritarian tendencies out to control society and make it more religious and wholesome. Right now, the left, because they made a Faustian deal with, whatever, are
The devil.
pushing an authoritarian message out that are anti-wholesome. But they have the levers of power right now. But I think that pendulum's on the way back.
Now back towards right side authoritarianism or towards a non-authoritarian form of government.
I think it's going to slide back to where we have a couple years in the middle, kind of like the 90s were.
Yep.
Beautiful time when black people and white people don't hate each other and we can all just kind of sing kumbaya, and then the right's going to come screaming back and it's going to be something we won't recognize, but it's going to be a creeping authoritarianism until they overreach, just like the left is right now. The left is overreaching. People are turning up their noses. Joe Rogan's talking about it. A damn near lifelong Democrat is now saying, what's going on with the left? So they've overreached. That pendulum's going to start to come back. It's going to hit, that happy medium in the middle and the bottom, and we're going to sail through for a couple of years, and then it's going to start to go to the right, and then my show's going to be all about bitching about the craziness that Republicans are pushing.
Well,
they want us to teach Christianity in science class. That's the same thing I remember thinking in the 80s and 90s, and that case didn't get solved in the Supreme Court till I think 2003.
The creationism versus
the creationism in science class.
Okay, right.
You have to teach it next to evolution.
I think, to your point, we can take a look at what's going on in Florida as how quickly and look, I think that Ron DeSantis's handling of the COVID apocalypse was among the best in the country. Okay. And I give him credit for that, but there is a distinct level of authoritarian lawmakers in Florida that are empowered because of the color red to make laws like, don't let your dog stick his head out the window.
Well, I've heard some stuff about this. I have no familiarity with the Florida bill. All I've heard is people who want to, have Black Lives Matter and gay pride flags in the classroom screaming about it. I personally believe that if you have a religion such as Black Lives Matter, or, the religion of we need to make little boys want to turn into little girls, those religions need to be kept in a fucking church and not in our schools. I think those are religions.
I do think that worship of the government and worship of power that some people could use a better religion than what they've decided.
It's not just that, but look at the way they act. They got an original sin, and they haven't figured out what atonement for that sin is yet. Apparently, it might be
concentration camps
or
castration.
What do you call it? The puberty blocking medication. Maybe that's your,
right.
ablutions that you have to give, but it's a religion. I haven't read this Florida bill. I would like to read it one day if I get some time to see what it actually says.
Yeah, there's more than the don't say gay bill though. Like
that don't say gay bill. This is why I don't trust them. Didn't say gay once.
It does. It's not about that, and it's a lie, right? Like
the word "gay" wasn't in the bill anywhere. All it was, you're not going to teach controversial sexual stuff to anyone until they hit 8th grade. Does that sound okay? Or no, was 8th grade, I think, or 4th grade. Don't talk sex with kids until they hit 4th grade. And people lost their fucking minds over that. You know what I call someone who talks, that's not a parent or an adult looking out for them, talks sex with people under 4th grade?
Pedophiles.
Lawnmower blade sharpeners.
Well, again, like that's where we're at. Like one side pushes really hard, their version of authoritarianism, then the other side's got to push back. And look, there's this phony virtue, and I think you're touching on it. I think we agree, guys, that adults can do what adults want to do. That's their business, who they associate with and how they associate with them. But this incessant drive to force ideology on children through the government does feel uncomfortable sometimes.
Well, put it like this.
No, I mean, I'm understating it. Like it's a strange time.
School is compulsory. I don't think schools should ever teach anything to a child that's going to make their home life awful.
That's a good way of doing it.
Because schools are compulsory. the parents have to send their kids to one of them numbers, right? And I don't think the
Right.
school should ever teach anything that's going to make it so the dinner table is a place where you argue and scream at each other. And that's that. So schools should teach straight vanilla, the R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. Just that's it.
What about clubs? Like on the side clubs, Jared,
You mean like a billy club or one of them waffle clubs? What kind of club are you talking about?
I'm talking about maybe they want to have like a gay lesbian club or something on the side in high school, or maybe they want to identify as cats with litter boxes and have little ears on their hats and
You
stuff.
mean in the school, or should they be allowed to,
like after school activities?
Yeah, after school activities, do whatever you want, not on government property. You want to have a club. Okay, we grew up in Mormon land. Mormons have something called seminary, right? Seminary is religious teachings. The school actually let you go for a period to go and learn about Jesus and Joseph and, all them other people. But
Brigham Young.
it can't be done on school property. It's done across the street.
But they advertise.
Wait, even in Utah, they don't allow it in school like that?
Nope, it is not allowed in school. They have a separate building.
I didn't realize that.
Off of school property.
You guys may be the last bastion of freedom on the face of the planet. I don't know.
Bastion of freedom.
Will they come and get us?
Yeah, try buying a beer on, or bottle of whiskey, or no
On Sunday, not happening.
Well, actually, in most counties in Utah, you can buy alcohol on Sunday. Well, okay, you can buy beer on Sunday. You cannot buy alcohol on Sunday.
Yeah, whiskey and all
Anywhere.
that. Nope, no go.
Or wine, because that's all has to go through a state liquor store. But no, I don't think there's any place in the United States that lives on pure freedom. You may have freedoms on one hand, you have to sacrifice the other hand for it. And that's everywhere in the United States. But we're going to see it. Mark my words. Let's meet up 15 years and talk about what the right wing is doing, because they're back in charge and they've lost their gosh dang minds.
Yeah, you and I have had a couple conversations live. I believe we touched on this in one of the radio shows that we did, where you feel like the pendulum is going to swing back. You're a little bit younger than me, so you probably have more time to be hopeful about. I'm concerned.
How many times have you witnessed that pendulum swing?
Well, I've got to say that what I feel as though I've witnessed my entire life was a decrease in freedom, especially economic freedom. Like, regardless of how I shaped and patterned my life, I think that when I was young and working in a bar, the money that I made was real. It went really far, and my life was just as easy then as it is now. I had less junk, but I had more spending money, I feel like,
Yeah, that's something I've often wondered about.
And I
wonder how much just the internet existing has changed us.
We have so many more things to spend money on nowadays, though.
How many televisions did you have in your house?
Yeah, just one.
How many do you have now? Yeah.
4, at least 4. I might have one in the closet, so I might have 5, right?
Here's a big thing. I'm going to drift back to my childhood. You know what we never had in the house in my childhood? I mean, it showed up on occasion. It was a party with soda.
Yeah.
And right now, always soda in my house.
That's an interesting point, because we never had we didn't even have Hamburger Helper, right? For me, when we were growing up, Hamburger Helper was rich person food, and now it's I know it's slightly insane, but now I mean I don't even buy it because it's not good enough for me.
Yeah, that's the bottom rung.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
For a while,
so
my young adult life, though,
everybody's life has gotten more extensive. I mean, I was a kid growing up. There were 5 of us kids plus 2 siblings plus, the parents, 1 TV in the house. You know, you fought over who got to
13
watch
channels,
what.
right?
Oh, you guys should hear my wife's history. I mean, when you're growing up in Brazil in a farmland,
Well, that's a third world country. We recognize that her enjoyment was chasing chickens.
well, the chickens would chase her back where
Yeah.
she's from.
But seriously, that's so I wonder how much of that feels like we're rushing more is that we need and want more. Yes, cars are more expensive. Houses, that's the killer though. I think it's on those big items, cars and houses. Televisions are cheaper now than they have ever been. Right now, a 52-inch flat screen, hang on the wall, fanciest TV is cheaper than a 13-inch was when I was a kid.
I spent a whole deployment in Iraq saving up for my first flat screen TV.
Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah.
the tube TV, the 85-pound 13-inch TV was more expensive than a 52-inch flat is right now.
That's in real dollars and even fake dollars, right? Like so that's an interesting point. My first flat screen TV was like a 42-inch Panasonic. I think I spent $1,600 on that thing, and my kid smashed it with a frisbee, right? And now I have 5 TVs that size that like I could go buy another one tomorrow. They're $300 at Walmart for a 52-inch TV.
Back then, when your TV broke, I'll bet you puckered up tight. I'll bet they couldn't have squeezed
I was sad.
molecule between the sphincter and other side of sphincter.
Oh, he was 4 years old, and I was so flippin' mad.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do. I couldn't even talk to him. Like I just had to, and he wanted to play frisbee, right? Like in the house, and which I thought was awesome, but then we smashed that TV, and it was bad.
Unrestrained markets, things become cheaper. Now, where are the two places in the average human's life where regulations and restraints touch the most?
Housing.
Housing and cars.
Housing and cars. Yeah.
Those are the two places that prices have only skyrocketed.
Because the government is the heavy hand of government.
I don't know
right?
if it's a heavy hand of government. I'm not going to make that call.
Well,
I'm just going to say, and medical care, except for LASIK and boob jobs.
Why are, so the question would be easily asked, why is LASIK and boob jobs, why are they declining in price because of purportedly technological advancement? Why are they cheaper now than they ever have been?
I just have to say the government doesn't control, regulate, or insure them.
Ask your insurance company.
Yeah, no, that's the why, right? So when we get to the issue of housing, we can go in the opposite direction. Why is it so expensive? And why is average medical care so expensive? Your everyday doctor's visits, why are they so expensive? Your housing is so expensive because you're no longer free to make agreements that benefit you. Why is there a housing shortage in upstate New York? Because we're not free to make agreements that benefit our neighbors. Okay,
it's
like
not just that,
if I want to rent a room to a guy and he turns out to be a psychopath, if I let him stay for a month, he can stay forever. Like that's a real problem. And so you add the burden of taxation, you add the lack of freedom to make decisions, and then you add on top of that, and ostensibly I get that codes are a good thing, but only ostensibly are they a good thing. I should be able to build whatever kind of house I want to build. If I want to live in a micro house with a set of stairs that runs on a 10-8 pitch instead of an 8-10 pitch, that fits into a 5-foot deal that gets me upstairs to my loft bed that I hit my head on if I stand up, I should be able to do that because that's what I want. Now, technically, I could theoretically do it, but I can't rent it out to anybody, and I can't sell it as a house.
How would it be if we had a private market to deal with? What was that guy who ran for president who said the Corvair was unsafe at any speed and wanted to make
Nader.
I always revert back to Nader. But how would it be if we had a private firm, multiple private firms, who went to new houses built? The government didn't lay any regulations. These private firms, you'd pay them however much they cost in your local area or not at all.
Right.
And they came in and they did a write-up on your house, on the availability and they gave it a Yelp review.
Again, the private market would have answers. Even if we went back to the banking debacle, we could have a private insurance firm where you agree that if my deposit goes over $250,000, I pay XYZ insurance company to back that. Like,
yeah.
So, but the issue is how do we sell it? Because that's the real issue. People want the boot of the government kicking their enemy's ass.
I'll tell you how you don't sell it. You don't have libertarians bring the message. That's how you don't sell it.
No, I can remember arguing with libertarians about the COVID thing, and I'm saying, like, look, mask mandates are a violation of freedom, and they're like, well, your employer can mask mandate and vaccine mandate and blah blah blah, and I'm like, you're talking about a purist position that doesn't necessarily make sense, and that doesn't take into account the long-term contracts that people have entered into, right? Like, does one person have the right to unilaterally change a contract if you have an ongoing contract that you schooled yourself for? And you try to present that to them, and they're just, it's like you're talking to a wall, you know? So there's a certain amount of entrenchment in certain styles of libertarianism that does not sell well to middle America.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's call it the autism angle, or everyone else is less libertarian than me angle, or whatever. Or just a lot of libertarians will look you dead in the eye and tell you where you're fucking up. They don't even butter you up or warm you up to it.
Yeah, social skills aren't the best in the Libertarian Party.
Revert back to autism. Can't make eye contact, counts pennies when they fall on the ground, knows how many toothpicks is in the jar. Again, we're all speaking the same language here. But I don't know. How do you sell to them? I think that the United States is on a date with destiny. I do.
In a good way or a bad way?
A bad way.
Have you read the Strauss-Howe
for the
80-year generational cycle?
The fourth turning? Yes, I've read the fourth turning. Read it 3 times now.
Okay, so I'm with you. That's where we're at. We're at the fourth turning. We need leaders.
I'm optimistic. I think great things are going to happen for this country. They might not be what the government want, but good things will happen.
A collapse doesn't mean bad things. I mean,
that's true.
I will tell you what, in a collapse, transgender or Black Lives Matter, all that shit goes away because you're fighting wolves.
Yeah.
Once you release wolves into the economy, wolves in amongst the populace, shuts up all that other bullshit.
Religion would take a backseat to survival.
Actually, I think religions with positive communities will swell.
Right. I painted with a broad brush there. I meant statist bootlicking religions would no longer be profitable.
I think these religions that aren't about building a surviving community will no longer be profitable.
I don't think the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints will go anywhere during an apocalypse.
It will swell.
It will probably grow, right?
There will be lots more temples.
I bet you they pray for it once in a while.
Have you let me tell you about the Mormons. I want you to look this up too, Tim. The Mormons are the ultimate preppers.
Preppers?
Yes. It is in their doctrine.
Oh, prepper. I heard you wrong. I'm sorry.
It is in their doctrine to be preppers. They have commandments to store food. They have commandments to be self-reliant.
It's pretty freaking impressive.
That's actually, I think for me, it's because we grew up so poor and there was always this notion of, hey, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Like, so I'm a scrimper, I'm a saver, I'm almost a hoarder. As a matter of fact, and this is unimportant, but it's kind of like I've been going through this dehortifying my entire life. And guys, I'm telling you right now, like, I'm not the most successful guy in the world, but like, if junk were an asset, like, I would be a millionaire. I haven't even taken it to the dump, some of it. Like, I have buckets of 5-gallon buckets of nuts and bolts and nails and stuff like that. And I'm just like, I can't quite, I have it in a pile. It's out of my storage facility. Maybe I'm going to throw it away.
There's our next podcast. All right. I'm going to Tim's place with a video camera, and you're going to Dad's. And we're going to have a hoard off.
Oh, let's do it.
Or a hoard swap where they decide his buckets are worth
my
two buckets of his.
My dad likes to buy cars for rust experimentation.
Oh, well, that's actually tops me already. He's got me on tonnage already. I can tell you that.
Off the top of my head, 24, 25 cars.
Oh my God, he's got me by a million pounds. Like, literally, I have tons of garbage.
But he's an auto body man. So
okay. Okay, so let me just tell you, I know what he's thinking. He's gonna fix some of these things up, and he's gonna make some money. I know what he's thinking.
We all know what he's thinking. Yeah, my dad, throughout my life, has only turned a wrench on his own car to make it run, never to make it pretty. Never seen it. Yeah,
I'd like
just put it like
I got to meet your dad. I'll drive my 2012 Ford Taurus, the victim of 4 deer apocalypses. It still goes. It still runs. It's got nice new tires. It's got a couple funny rubbing sounds.
Welcome to the transmission of transmissions.
Yep. Maybe he's got a hood for me, and it'll walk away looking better.
You said 2004, right?
2012.
That's like a new car.
No, that's geez. Come on now.
Too new for him?
Oh, come on. I mean, he's out of the crank start theory, but
okay.
AC isn't invented. Actually, he has 2 cars that are crank start, but
that's awesome. Are they? And they're all fixed up and look great.
Oh yeah, fixed up. Weeds have grown up past the rust.
You
think I'm kidding?
He's
no, I don't.
Do so.
You think I'm kidding?
I don't think you're kidding. Because I know what he's going through mentally. I know.
Yeah, I do too. I do the same thing with old guns.
Yeah, I mean,
we all have our bad habits.
I do it with video projects.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that constant need for action, that constant need of this is the big score.
I think
that's going to be great.
It's not that this is the big score. It's that's a deal.
Yeah.
That's a deal.
It's a good deal.
Is it going to go anywhere after that? No, but that's a deal.
Oh my God, that's great.
I mean, yeah, but no, it'd be a fun show, a fun show. And he might be watching this right now, and he might call up.
If I had known there was going to be a hoard off in my future, I definitely could have won though. Like I could have won. I have a good sized house on the lake. I had a second place that we were renting out for vacation rental, but there were outbuildings on it that were filled with stuff. And then I still had my shop, which I had accumulated. Well, like for example, I had a 5-gallon bucket. Once I got done, 5-gallon bucket of hardware, like cabinet hardware and hinges and bolts and stuff. Look, guys, honestly, if you want a good deal on brand new merch like this, some of the stuff's still in the package. I would never bother to take it back.
Yeah.
I just filled a 5-gallon bucket with it.
I've got the same, but the question is, do any of the cabinet hitches match? Could you get a full set out of it?
It's like having 3 tires and expecting they sell them, right?
But no, it is what it is, and my dad does have dreams. He's got a 32 Packard he wants to make run. I love the idea, but
I got an engine. I got a hand crank engine that maybe will fit in one of his cars.
Hey, it might, You know, but that's just what he does. You know, it shows up and he collects it, and you know, it's just collected around down behind grandma's house, and you know, you can see his place on Google Maps. I'm just throwing it down. You know, like
now does he part anything out or anything like that? No, right?
Oh, it's all for sale.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, right. He's not like bought and sold on it. He'll sell anything.
Oh, cool.
I'm telling you right now, when we're done recording this, I'm going to tell you the city to look in, and I promise you, you'll be able to find it.
All right.
I promise you. That or Lance Smith's place. Those are the only two places. But no, it's you'll recognize it. Lance Smith doesn't have any hand crank, and his stuff is all Chevrolet from the 60s and 70s. But everyone has their thing, you know. I mean, it's good. But yeah, no, this has been a good chat. But I do think that we're heading for hard times. I think, and I don't think we're heading for hard times just because of the Federal Reserve. I think the world is heading for hard times because empires only last so long.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? And 250 years is a pretty good run.
That's I think the limit.
Yeah, the Fed has incurred some karma though for this, for its, I want to call it malfeasance, or it's artificially low interest rates. It's lack of accountability to actual investors. Like there's this quasi status of the privately owned bank gets to write numbers that it doesn't have the assets to back its play. It's just the government says it can do it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we may be heading for hard times. We have a generation, or not even a generation. There's fragments of our society right now that are more concerned with not family, not production, not the future. Everything is here and now, and they counteract some of the losses of their buying power with promises of increasing their buying power. The government's going to use force to make their lives better, and
it's not just
ongoing scam.
The boomers have done everything. One, they've maintained control, and they've done everything to empower government to maintain their wealth at the expense of the opportunity and wealth of their children and grandchildren. And that's not to blame all boomers, but that's just the policy that came out. And now we've still got boomers running into their 90s in our government.
Yeah.
How crazy
is that? And it goes all the way down to 2 years older than me. You can be 58 years old and you're still a boomer. Like it was a huge generation. It was a long generation. And yeah, no, you're right. It's a mess. It's a train wreck.
So I don't know. One of these generations are going to get honed in the crucible.
Musical chairs. The music stops and you got to grab a chair, and not everyone's going to get one.
And they're going to be
Gen X.
They're going to be digging us out. No, us Gen Xers, we did not a damn thing, and we're not going to do anything. We hold no power. They're skipping us for president. I mean,
no, that's why they take our chair when we play musical chairs. We're going to be the ones knocked onto the ground. So you're a Gen Xer. I'm a Gen Xer. Just so you know, like I was like the first or second. I was the first year of Gen X, I think, or second year of Gen X.
I'm 75, so there's like 4 or 5 years after me.
I'm 74. Yeah. I think I got away. No, I am 75. Oh, no,
you're a Gen Xer.
You're 77, right?
I'm 45. 45. That's right.
Yeah, you're a Gen Xer.
Yeah, you're still a Gen Xer.
But I'm having senior moments.
How many Gen Xers are in government?
None, because we're one of the smallest generations ever.
Yeah, because the boomers kind of sucked all the air out of them. But it's okay. We are going to be the ones that they're going to snatch Social Security from.
That's what I'm saying. When it comes time to yank the chair out, yank it out from Gen X.
Yeah, we're going to be the ones who either has to have our own way built or live with our kids.
My kids hate me. That ain't going to work.
Hey, we're golden then. But it is what it is. I recognize it. I'm not mad about it. It is what it is. It's
Right.
going to be another thing, maybe I kill over and die in a gutter over it, but it is what it is. The boomers stripped us dry, and a generation after me is going to have to build us up. And part of it's our fault because we didn't get involved. We didn't fight to put ourselves in the environment to fight for ourselves.
Did you catch my sigh there? That's a recurring recognition of my life, that basically I feel as though I have a reasonable amount of skill or talent when it comes to communicating things, and I could have gotten involved in politics a little bit sooner. Not that I would have been hugely successful, but there could have been some. I've had a positive impact once I started getting political.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, should I have started sooner?
For sure.
Would it have made a difference? That's something I wrestle with all the time.
Hell, it would have been nice had I even became civilly aware before I was 40.
I was a neocon, man. Like, I'm like, yeah, let's go to Iraq. Let's do it. And then I'm like, hang on, let's not go to Iraq. We're going to kill kids. That's bullshit, And then it turned out like stories were told, lies were exaggerated, things were exaggerated. There were truths, there were falsities. I hated war. I luckily never was confronted with an issue of war for my lifetime, like that I would have been able to serve for. And George Bush Jr. was a horrible liar. Like, he wasn't that smart. The good Bush, Neil Bush, got screwed in the savings and loan scandal, and his career was ruined because of that. He was actually articulate and might have made a good president.
All right. Now, is he the good Bush just because you're weighing him against the other Bushes? Or
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's go with that.
It's a low bar, like generational presidents. Who would have thought that?
Here's a question. What would the U.S. be like had Barry Goldwater got across the mark?
I don't know. What do you think?
A lot of people think that was our last grasp at a liberty-minded nation. That after that, it's all downhill.
Ross Perot?
Ross Perot was a government should do this kind of guy.
He was a big government guy. He just didn't want big taxes on big companies. But Barry Goldwater, a lot of people theorize that he was our last chance to have a government that didn't get involved in the average person's life as much as they do.
Based on what I've seen, right? Like, that populism has been growing, that the government should crowd has won every argument, even though they're wrong about everything. It's like, so based on what I'm seeing, I guess Ronald Reagan talked a good game, but he grew the government like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
He he paid lip service to the Second Amendment, but yet the net result was a restriction in gun rights.
Not to mention, he put the first gun law in since the NFA. When he was governor of California.
So, yeah, it's been interesting.
But Barry Goldwater was the one who said, you can't force people to serve other people, which was the most basic. Nobody argues that now, except for Ron Paul did after he was already dead, out of government. But nobody on the field has argued the right to do business with who you want to do business with.
I mean, it's not
because
morally
then they
right.
write you off and they automatically go, you're a racist or you're a bigot or you're like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just amazing. Until
it's people they like kicking people they don't like out, then they say it's a private company.
That Twitter. I mean,
it's all about
until you have to hold the reins of power.
Authoritarianism cannot be practiced by those who have no power.
I agree.
And that's why right now the left is authoritarian. The left will probably always have this colleges, right?
Yeah.
they've lost the judiciary for the first time since what, the 20s?
What do you mean lost it? They're.
The judiciary leans conservative.
Oh,
The
okay, got
first
you.
time.
Okay.
By what? 2 judges?
The first time in over 100 years.
Are we talking about the Supreme Court?
Yeah, the Supreme
All
Court.
right. So when I look at John Roberts and I look at what's that other joker's name that they made, Kavanaugh?
Yeah,
I don't know that they lean. They're pragmatists and they're almost populists. Like
yeah, but they're what I'm saying is in their rhetoric.
Okay.
You know, because rhetoric is all that matters.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Right.
but
Right. Fair enough.
I mean, rhetoric is what drives you to the drive-in.
Yeah.
And so it was. I mean, it's the first time in like 100 years that we have a Supreme Court that has any kind of rhetoric away from the left, which is crazy.
Yeah.
All of your bureaucracies, which is the big one, are managed and ran by the left.
I agree with that.
But that is the one that changes the quickest.
The autocracy
Yeah.
changes.
It's the one that changes the quickest through changes in the populace. Because people do retire.
Right. Okay.
And then people get brought up under people, and it pushes them kind of out.
Oh, okay. I got you. Yeah. All right. The jobs program that is the government.
Because-
when you're an elected politician, you can fill all
Yeah.
of your local
It's not just
offices with your friends and family.
But here's a question: how many leftists ran to work at the FBI under Bush?
It was a successful strategy, right?
Yeah, they all ran in under Obama 20
Right.
years ago, which is why they're in senior management now.
They need to retire.
So it yes, when I say changes the fastest, I'm talking a 5
generation.
to 10 year swing, but
Right.
but that is, that's one of the things we'll see. But that pendulum's going to swing back. The left, I mean, the left's lost Joe Rogan, the most popular human being on earth.
What about that one comedian? He's starting to go a little right too. What's his name?
All of them.
All of them are
That
kind of
nighttime
breaking
show
right.
host.
Even
Nighttime show host.
Gray hair, glasses. He's funny as
Colbert?
heck. No, not Colbert.
because he's not
left.
funny.
And he's not
He used
funny.
to be funny.
Nighttime show host. This kind of gray hair.
Beady eyes, glasses.
Yes, glasses.
I'm describing your typical leftist, right?
No,
Yeah.
I mean, if you're talking Gutfeld's been on the right forever. He's actually a sports writer.
Drew Carey.
by trade. I don't know, but no, I mean, it's that the left has overreached. They've reached the apex of their swing, and then it's going to come back, and then I'm going to have my old age of happy times, like the '90s were, where
Oh my God, the '90s were awesome,
grunge
right?
music is born, and we wear jeans that look like they belonged on wild animals, and and the music is it's okay. The 80s,
It's okay.
had better music,
It's all right.
but grunge was cool. It was new, and it was new.
Yeah,
Except everybody sounded the same, but everyone sounded new the same. I mean,
yeah, I get what you're saying.
But
It's
and we're going to
hilarious.
hit that apex. And then the right's going to run like now. One of the differences is generally the left's turn on the apex of the pendulum swing is longer.
Bill Maher.
Yeah, Bill Maher's he's doing something, but he ain't going to vote Republican ever. Because Bill Maher gained his consciousness in the 90s when the Republicans were running like rabid animals towards religion. And he actually got his start dogging the Republicans about that rabid run towards religion. So he'll probably become agnostic on political matters. But no, but the left hangs out longer because, cuddly puppies and, we're going to hug and love on everyone, right?
My fascism is the nicest fascism. Pick me.
Yeah. Yeah, they're the tender side of fascism that offers free money to people who are, bad with theirs.
Oh, free money will make me a leftist.
But the right kind of get a little hardcore with stuff, so they don't last as long.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like communism outlived any fascist, any National Socialist Party. I mean, they even outlived Spain.
Right.
Yeah. Just because one's
Makes
a
sense.
little harder than the other.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming up on our second hour of the happy hour.
Yeah, we got to cut it.
That's it. Guys, it was a fun show. Hopefully I contributed on the interest rate banking crisis, the inflation-driven COVID response.
Hold on to your hope and hold on to your Bitcoins because they're going to be very related in the future.
Yeah.
All right.
100%.
You got it, man.
All right. Hey, Tim, thanks again. This is always good. We're going to reach out again to you in the next couple of months and chat it out again.
Cool. Let's do it.
Bring up.
I love it, guys. I love talking to you guys. It's great.
Yeah, it's good.
Kindred spirits. It's good when you find there's a wavelength. Like I have a lot of people that I get along with, a lot of people that I like, a lot of people that are doing hard work in my community to make it better. But there's issues that I have that they don't want to accept, that corruption exists, that sometimes it's the issue that already there's too much power. And they're like, yeah, but if we have the power, we can fix it. But to talk to you guys and say, like, let's disempower them, it feels good to know that there are other people out there that realize the issues.
Not many in New York, but there are other people out there.
Practically zero.
And New York would be a tough haul. Because New York, I mean, New York, they call them New York Republicans for a reason. Those are Republicans that want to assert control over you.
Yeah.
It's
oh God, I had epic fights over the fact that I was not going to vote for Zeldin. It was just amazing. Like, I didn't care, but I do have some friends though that are libertarian minded that they're purported conservatives. They see they're doing a lot of good work, and I'm very happy to have found them.
I heard Cuomo's working his way back into government, though.
If it wasn't for cancel culture, that guy would still be governor.
Dude, I'm telling you, the Social Security savior, he's a cat.
He's a populist. He's going to lie. He's going to lie his way back in.
Mm-hmm.
They have this disgusting narcissistic love of power that the lust is unquenchable, and they have told so many lies at the right time that people have these fond memories of the lies that they've told. And so he's still popular. Like that's the reality.
Well, they've got the biggest, wettest fingers because they do this and they can tell which way the breeze is blowing better than everyone else.
That's because they have no morality and no ethics and no standards and nothing to that anchors them.
They're perfect for New York.
Well, you ready to hear someone getting pissed?
Sure.
Lots of people.
Yeah.
That is Trump. Do you think Trump by himself thought at all about immigration?
It was no. Trump is a populist.
Where was he making his ties?
China.
In Mexico.
Yeah, look.
Well, the Mexicans got him from
No,
China.
it's fine. It's fine. He was making his ties in Mexico. But Trump looked around and saw an avenue to that office. And the reason he went that way is because this is my thoughts. Obama at that stupid dinner with all the sycophants said, "You'll never be in the White House." And I think that's when Trump said, "I'm running for president."
Yeah, he did. I mean, he definitely ran for president. He definitely seized on issues that
Issue.
i-
Issue.
issue. Yeah,
Did
everything else he
Trump
did.
say anything about we're going to steady out our economy, our monetary system, we're going to rein in the Federal Reserve? No, he mentioned it once when he was up against Rand Paul. Then after that, he spent his whole time as president trying to tell the Fed to dump more money into his market.
Successfully, I might add. Like
Yeah.
he was definitely he is definitely a modern monetary theorist, that the government is the source of money and we control, encourage it. Look,
Do you know much about modern monetary theory?
I know enough to say that it's
Don't tell
what
us yet. That's going to be I want
okay.
someone to come on that can explain that to me.
Well, it's
Don't
yeah.
explain it
All
to
right.
me yet. Next,
Okay.
we make a whole show about it.
All right.
And that's not to say I dislike Trump or like Trump. I don't care enough to vote for him or not vote for him or vote against him.
Right. There's issues. I can no longer pick the lesser of two evils. Trump was hilarious in 2016. I definitely voted for him then. I definitely thought once he was really running and had won the primary, I'm like, well, I'm just going to troll my friends and vote for this guy and hope he wins. It was never there was never a belief that he was a savior for me. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't look to the federal government for saviors anyway. Neither do you guys. You know that.
No, yeah. I don't vote for president anyway.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. Well, I like to explain it. We'll have to leave right after this.
Okay.
It's like voting whether you want to eat old, dry, ashy dog turd in the yard or the freshly snapped off dog turd.
I mean, I say it as, you vote for the lesser of two evils. Evil is laughing because
Yeah.
evil still won. Evil's like, jackpot, you got it. So we make no serious decisions ever.
Yeah, we lose either way.
Welcome to democracy.
Yeah.
You lose.
Mm-hmm. Tim, as always, it's been a pleasure.
Likewise, guys. I have a blast.
If I ever get out east, I'm going to come visit. I want to see this lake house. And if you get out west, you come on out here.
It's got to happen, right? Like,
yeah. Or let's just go meet in the middle.
Yeah.
What's in the middle?
Where's like East Palestine? Is that about the middle?
That's a good idea. We don't need to worry about a retirement program. We just spend 3 days in an Airbnb there and write our will.
There we go.
Euthanize yourself.
That's the way out. Well, good news is you don't have to worry about dying of old age.
So much for Social Security.
All right. Yeah.
All right, guys.
Thanks again.
Yep.
Have a good one, man.
Yep. You too.